Welcome, everybody, to an exclusive episode of The Sheriff. Guys, do I ever have a treat for you today? I have a real-life living legend with me today, ladies and gentlemen. Now, my guest today, he is a guy that is a pioneer for the sport of hockey. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there is good players and there's great players. My guest today is a great player. And to be honest with you, in my opinion, probably one of the greatest Black players next to Jerome McKegney and Grant Fuhr. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, he hails from Montreal, Quebec. He has played over 900 NHL games, ladies and gentlemen, scoring an incredible 300 goals. And ladies and gentlemen, he was drafted almost in the first round to the team that I was drafted to, the Buffalo Sabres, and we're going to get into all of that and much, much more. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mr. Tony McKegney, how are you doing this evening, my friend?
Hey, Sean. Great and great intro. I heard lots of good things about your podcast, and I'm so happy that I finally got a chance to be with you and on it. But I wanted to begin by the question I asked you. We're two Black hockey players. I have a last name that is Irish. You have a last name and first name that are Irish. Can you tell me your story? Because I know my story.
Well, you know what? I'm honored to be asked the question by the legend Tony McKegney, and I'm very happy to tell you. So, my name, Sean Michael McMorrow. When I was younger, I used to think I was the Heartbreak Kid, Mr. Shawn Michaels, the WWF wrestler. My middle name is Michael. But to answer your question, Sean Michael McMorrow was originally Sean Michael Scipio. My parents split up when I was 6 years old, and my mother's family is from Toronto. Now, we were all born in Vancouver as my parents had moved out there when things were thriving in the late 70s. So when we moved back to Toronto, my mother, who is 100% Irish, my father is 100% from Trinidad and Tobago. So I have a Black Trinidadian father and a 6 foot white Irish mother. So now my white Irish mother thought it would be best for the kids to have our names changed from Scipio to McMorrow, which is her family's last name, because all the McMorrows were in Toronto. And with all the cousins and everything, she just thought it would be appropriate. And I'm happy that she did it. I'm very proud of my name. Scipio is still a part of my name, but McMorrow is my surname, and I'm very proud of it.
What about Sean? What about the Shawn Michael thing? Obviously, you had that. You can't get much more Irish than that.
Well, no, I can't, and I'm ecstatic to have the middle name Michael. But what I was referring to is that Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty are a famous tag team, WWF tag team group. Right. And so when I was younger, and I was a big fan of Hulk Hogan and all these guys, I used to be like, yeah, my name's Shawn Michaels, so I must be Shawn Michaels from the Rockers. So
I'll tell you
a story though. Tony McKegney, how did you get a name like that, looking like you, sir?
Yeah, you know what? Interesting story, Sean. I was born in Montreal, Quebec, and my father was from Nigeria. And it's funny, we mentioned about all these connections with siblings coming from the Caribbean, from Nigeria, of all places, and end up in the NHL. My mother was from Lithuania. They met at university in Montreal. And unfortunately, my father had to go back to school at Oxford in England. He could not take her back, and she was a single parent and trying to raise me. So she couldn't handle it. And I was in an orphanage actually for about a month, I think. And then I got my medical records because I found my original mother in Canada and my original sisters. I got to know them through the DNA thing. So in saying that, basically, I found out I was in an orphanage, and 5 different families were vying to adopt me. And the one family that adopted me had the same religious background as my mother, my biological mother. So the family adopted me, and they had 3 of their own children at the time, one of which was adopted. And then myself, and then my older brother was Black, and he was adopted about probably 3 years prior to me, thereabouts. So basically, that basically got me involved in hockey. But the first day I got there, I was 13 months old. Everybody was out in the backyard doing this activity, and I'd sit there in the kitchen, look out the kitchen window. What are they doing out there? And I couldn't wait to join them on what was outside. It was wintertime when I was adopted, so it was the middle of winter when I went there. And the rink was in full force, and my brothers and my sister as well. were just walking in and out of the house with skates on and out there, and all their friends were coming over to our house. And that's what I remember with growing up. And then I finally, at 2.5 years old, I got a pair of skates and started skating and playing hockey. And
Well,
that's how I got the name. My dad was from Ireland. Came over with his family, father, mother, my grandmother, grandfather, and came to Ireland. My father was a minister. And so anyway, long story short, that's how they came to Canada from Ireland. And I got the name McKegney.
Well, I appreciate hearing that, because I love hearing about history. I love hearing the good stories. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Well, I was very lucky, Sean. I was going to say very fortunate to go to that family, because I'm thinking that the other four families that were maybe going to adopt me probably didn't have a hockey rink in their backyard. So in that element, I was extremely lucky to be in that situation.
Yes, I 100% agree. Now, there's a bunch of really interesting and cool facts that I just heard here, sir. Now, first of all, this outdoor rink, we're definitely going to get back into that, because I became a huge fan of outdoor rinks ever since I played. I lived and played in Quebec City, which I know you did as well.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to talk to you about La Capitale.
Sure.
So now, Mr. McKegney, this is an amazing story that you just told. Okay, so the story of your biological parents, the story of this family adopting you. Now, let's go back to what year in time this was. Okay.
Actually, I was born in 1958, and I was adopted 13 months later in 1959 is when I went down from Montreal to Southern Ontario. And my mother came to pick me up on the train and brought me back. And when I got to the house, I've seen pictures of it. My dad is a photographer, my adopted father. And it jogged my memory because there were 15 people there waiting for me when I came to the house. And it was almost like a celebration of me arriving. They knew I was coming, and they couldn't wait till I got there. So that was my introduction to my new family. And I won't forget that. It's still some things you remember. And when you see a picture, sometimes it just makes it all come together for you.
I find this absolutely incredible. Like, this is incredible. I want to stay on this for a little bit. Your brother Ian, so he's also adopted.
Actually, it was my brother Mike was adopted just ahead of me, and my brother Ian is from my adopted parents. So there were three children from original, and then my brother Michael, older than me, was adopted. So 3 white children, 1 black children. Then I became number 5 in the family.
Wow. Okay. So now your older brother, he broke a lot of barriers as well. Now, wasn't he the first Montreal Canadian black player? Yeah,
he was, Sean. It's very interesting you brought that up. I was so proud when somebody sent me the story from Montreal, Ray-Jean Houle, and I was so happy that I totally didn't think about that, him being the first African-American player to be drafted by the Montreal Canadiens. And when I thought about it, and I played against Montreal for my whole career, so I didn't see anybody during my 15 years. So it made sense to me that I watched Montreal for 5 years, the whole time I was in Kingston playing junior hockey. I knew the Montreal Canadiens team very well. So I was so proud of them when that happened. And I'll tell you a story. Because I was watching the games from the stands when my older brother, 4 years older than me, was playing. Great hockey player. So I heard a lot of the verbal abuse, racial stuff, because I was in the stands, and I heard it, and I heard it.
Firsthand.
And in two parts of the story, I think my brother took a lot more abuse than I did because he came before me, and nobody was used to a black person being a great hockey player. They weren't used to that, dominating. So the other thing was we had 3 other black families living in a town of 75,000 people. There were three black families in Sarnia, where I grew up before Kingston. So there were 20 black people living in one city, and we were 2 of them. So you didn't see any black people. It was if you saw them, it was an oddity. So that was a situation with regard to sports and hockey and everything else. But my brother definitely took the brunt of a lot. And when my situation was different, when I got on the ice, I shut everything out. I didn't look at anybody in the crowd. My whole focus was on what was happening on the ice. And in the NHL, the only time I looked up into the audience was after I scored a goal, and I just wanted to look up and see the people being happy and rejoicing. Other than that, I didn't hear anything of anybody. You just shut it out, shut it out, shut it out. The only people I heard, there were a couple of trainers that would yell at me, and people that were near the bench, you could hear them because you were close to the bench yelling shit at you. Other than that, I shut her down, focus on the ice, and I didn't want anybody to distract me with anything. I was out there to do a job and make the NHL. That was my goal, and I did it.
You sure
being
did.
Being a black person, I did it.
You definitely did it. Now, just to add to that, you know, you made a comment that, you know, you were able to tune everything out. You were completely locked in. You tuned everything out. You concentrated on what was important on the ice. Now, you're very talented, my friend, to be able to do that, because I can't do that. I'm always looking into the crowd. I'm always doing that. So that's amazing discipline and focus that you had. That's the first thing I wanted to point out. Now, the second thing I wanted to point out was you did mention that there was times where you were able to hear that abuse and you couldn't like lock it out all the time.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Now,
when I was,
sorry, go ahead. Yes.
I was going to say, Sean, when I was a young person, we lived in a larger town and we played against all the smaller towns in the area. So we were going to these small towns and we're playing against, and we won all the time because they were small towns. They weren't good as, we had the best players from a town of 75,000 people going into a small town of Petrolia, Ontario, of 2,500 people and winning all the time. So I pretty much got the puck all the time. And at one point, I thought my middle name was the N-word. Yeah. And you get to the point, and there was a lot of racial strife going on in Michigan. Then I go over and play Michigan. I went to Ohio. Went to some places where in Michigan, they weren't used to some black kid basically having the puck pretty much all the time. It was an oddity. And it just, I don't know if it made people nervous. In my hometown, everybody loved it because we helped the team win and everybody got along with us. Our parents knew all the other parents. We knew the other players. Everybody got along because we won all the time. And we only had one coach. So the parents were never involved with anything to do with the team because we were winning and everybody was happy.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I really want to pick your brain a little bit about like growing up in Sarnia, though, because like I mentioned before the recording, I had an opportunity to live in Sarnia as well. I was drafted to the Sarnia Sting. Now, this is in 1999, Mr. McKegney, so it's a little bit after your time, okay?
Well, my friends on the team there, the Cicerellis, when you were drafted.
Yes, the three brothers. And I remember
they didn't consult me on you. By the way.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I was a hand-picked Mark Hunter pick because he was the GM and coach at the time. Right. And when Mark was relieved of his duties at the Christmas break, you know, it's rumored that him and Dino don't really see eye to eye, but, you know, that they respect each other as men, but they just don't get along that well in the same room. So Mark kind of got the boot at Christmas time. And then a lot of the guys that were kind of like Mark's guys, we all got unloaded when we came back from the Christmas break. But I had a great experience in Sarnia. I remember being in that high school, and I'm not going to lie, Mr. McKegney, I think I was one of a handful of non-Caucasian students. Mm-hmm. So when you're telling me about, and we went, I think it was Northern High School that I went to in Sarnia. Yeah. Now, when you were mentioning about the three families, I totally get you, man, because it hasn't changed that much. Yeah. In 1999, it was very few and select that I would see like a black person in Sarnia.
They certainly weren't going to hockey games.
They certainly weren't going to hockey games. That's right. Yeah. Now, sir, what about school? What about school in Sarnia? Like, what was it like in a small town like that? Now, mind you, you're a star in this small town.
Yeah, so it was interesting because I was 14 years old playing junior B, and I ended up, and then I turned 15 during the season. So, and I was playing against a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds that were going to get scholarships. There was guys that didn't make junior A, and they were playing juvenile hockey, and then junior B was a stepping stone for them. So here I am at 14, 15, and I wasn't going to play Bantam anymore. So here I am, I make the junior B team. I end up leading the team in scoring as a 15-year-old. And one of the guys on my team had 2 children. And I'm going to practice, and the guy's got 2 infants that I'm playing hockey with, and I'm 15 years old. So, but I knew at that time, when I was 15, 16, that I knew I was going to make the NHL. If I didn't get hurt, that would be the one thing, because I was playing as good as these guys in junior A that were getting drafted. And I was 16, 17 years old, and I was in the top 10 in scoring, and they were going in the first round of the NHL draft. So I'm thinking, okay, just don't get hurt and wait until you're 19. And then you can go to the NHL.
Exactly. Now, this is a time frame that I do have a few important questions for you. Now, obviously, Mr. McKegney, when I have pioneers such as yourself on my show, I always have to remind the listeners, because obviously my base isn't the majority Black. You know what I'm saying? So I have to remind them of what it was like for guys at this time and the things that you had to go through. And my point of saying this is more of a thank you, because you had to go through it, sir, so that I could have a chance to play. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. The abuse, the heartache, the hurdles, there was wonderful things as well, but there was a lot of things that were very difficult for guys like yourself that were unfair and unjust. But because of your mental toughness, because of the way that you deliver and always get through everything in life, you got through it and you made things possible for those after us. And that topic we're going to get into a little bit towards the end of the show. What I want to talk about right now is this time, the Birmingham time. Okay.
Sean, I'll talk about that. Very interesting. But I was going to go back to what you just mentioned. Very important point you mentioned about the last thing you said about, for me, it was a matter of, perseverance, not quitting, and just the thought of attaining goals and so forth. And getting back to the other thing about the distractions, it's just that I didn't want to be distracted by my teammates. I didn't want to take the focus off what we're trying to do. And I think the main thing is that it's so difficult once you get there to maintain that and stay in the NHL. Because the two-way contract, the minor leagues are always looming. There's always 3 or 4 guys that can come up from Rochester and play on our team. So you always had to make sure there was no lapse. The numbers had to be there for you to stay in that. That's the way it was back then, as you remember, Sean. But the Birmingham situation was very interesting because my best friend on my junior team, Ken Linsman, who ended up going and have a great NHL career, Stanley Cups, and great career, great hockey player. So we were best friends. He lived with me in junior because his mother passed away of cancer when we were both 16 years old. So he came to our house and had all his meals there. His father was trying to raise 5 kids. And so my land parents basically housed him and fed him when he wanted to, anytime he wanted to come, open door. So that helped him. So we remained friends, and he signed with Birmingham before last year in junior. And he went down there, had a great year, and I missed him and I wanted to be with him. In Birmingham, in the middle of my last junior year, they were offering me a lot of money and they wanted me to leave in the middle of the year, and contractually I couldn't do it. And they said, okay, well, at the end of the season, we're going to do this. So sure enough, in June, early part of June, I signed the contract with Birmingham and Northern Ontario, the Muskokas. And so sure enough, about within a week to 10 days, we get word that some of the season ticket holders in Birmingham were upset that a Black hockey player was going to be coming to their team, and they weren't happy about that. So they had that situation going on. So at the same time, they were talking about bringing in the baby Bulls from Ontario League, Quebec League. So those guys went, Rob Ramage, Michel Goulet, Rick Vibe, and all those guys went to Birmingham. At the same time, when I get out of my contract, I then fast forward to 2 weeks later, the NHL draft's on. And my agents told all the NHL teams that I'm getting out of the Birmingham contract. So they worked out a deal with Buffalo to draft me and sign me to a contract that day. And the only good thing about the whole thing was that I got a signing bonus from Birmingham before they had to let me go. and I got a signing bonus in Buffalo. So
Hey, man.
in retrospect, other than my mother being so upset at the news of what happened to me in Birmingham, and I never went down there. I was never down there. It all happened by phone and in Toronto and stuff, meeting with John Bassett. But in essence, my mother was so upset. I never saw her cry before. And when she got that news, I read the paper, it was in the paper. My mother was crying, and they were quietly happy I wasn't going to Birmingham, Alabama, because they were really nervous about me going down there.
Well,
And
yes, of
they
course.
never mentioned it. They thought it was hockey, but I mean, at the same time, they thought about Birmingham, Alabama. I was just thinking to go play hockey and be with my buddy and go score 30 goals or something.
Yeah, no, and you would have got 30, 40 goals. That would have happened. I just, some things just aren't meant to be. And
Well, it worked out great, Sean, because I got to go to a team that was established. And a year later, the Birmingham Bulls, along with a lot of other teams, folded with the WHA. And then, as you know, Quebec, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Calgary came into from the WHA. They jumped over. Those teams came over. Hartford, again, I'm trying to think of anybody else. So anyway, that happened all at the same time. So had I gone to Birmingham, same situation, 1 year there, and then you're back in the draft again or something. So I went to Buffalo. My family's from Ontario. All my friends and family were coming to the games in Buffalo, being from Ontario, Toronto, Hamilton, Sarnia. So to have them be able to come down at a day's notice to go to a hockey game, it was fabulous that they were able to see me play. And that if I got drafted by Atlanta, they were coming to Atlanta to watch hockey.
Yeah.
On a moment's notice. So that was cool that my family was able to come to Buffalo for all the years I was here.
Yes, of course. And it was 5 wonderful years for the Sabres, right, sir?
Yeah, it was good for me, Sean, coming to an established team where there were guys that I grew up watching and liked, like Gilbert Perreault and Danny Gare. Just great leadership, great guys. That the team was hardworking. Fans were great. We won a lot at home. Not too many people beat us on our own rink, which I take pride in. And we won a couple of division titles. We didn't have President's Trophy back then. They didn't have it then. They brought it in later. But yeah, we went to the semis a couple times, and we had a couple teams in the quarterfinals that were good enough, and we just got beat by a couple hot goalies. We had a couple guys that didn't show up, unfortunately, at the end of the year, and but a couple teams were really close to. If we would have got back past that one level, which is the second round, we got the semis. We could have been all right, I think, but I mean, a lot of things have to happen to make that work. And I'll tell you an interesting story, Sean. My career. So Montreal wins the Stanley Cup 4 times in a row. Okay. When that finishes, the Islanders win the cup 4 times in a row. I got beat up by the Islanders in the semifinals. They go on to win the cup. So after that, Edmonton wins the cup 4 times in a row. So there's 12 years. If I wasn't on one of those 3 teams, there's 12 Stanley Cups.
That's
unless you were on one of those teams for 12 years, that's it.
Yeah.
And there were 21 teams. So if you were on one of those 3 teams, they were, 4, 4, and 4, 12 years.
Isn't that something?
And then Pittsburgh wins 2 in a row.
Yeah.
Right. So that there's my career. I won a President's Trophy, but they don't give you a ring for that, unfortunately.
Exactly. And you know what? I just want to remind the listeners, Mr. McKegney, of how it was like really a heyday for Western New York, specifically Buffalo and Rochester, New York, when you lived and played there. Those cities were thriving. They had the Kodak, the Xerox, all those factories are pumping. People are working. The city of Buffalo. Now, I know there was like a couple riots and stuff. So like things might have went down a couple of years, but I know the city was just a really well-built, strong city. And it's not so much like that right now in downtown Buffalo. But when you were there, man, those were such the glory days. You guys had such a good team. You guys would always be beating those Toronto Maple Leafs. And like one of the conversations that we had, sir, was I want you to talk about the Canadian support of your team from all the way up to Toronto, right through Hamilton, the Niagara region, the QEW. Like Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know you
Yeah.
guys are televised in Ontario as well,
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's true about being televised. And we a lot of fans between here being Fort Erie, if you will, Buffalo, New York, right? And Toronto, and then beyond that. And then even going the other way towards Woodstock, Ontario, they could get that feed over there. I talked to people who watch this in Woodstock, Ontario, a place like that, and obviously Guelph in that area. But I was going to tell you about my friends were the original owners of the Buffalo Sabres. And I was in the middle of writing a book before the COVID, and I've still got, I don't know, 8 chapters. I've got more to do, but it's there. So I was doing research on how the Buffalo Sabres came into the National Hockey League, and it took 8 years to get the team here. And I said, why did it take 8 years? And they said, well, they looked at Pittsburgh, who got in, and Philadelphia, who got in '67, and LA and Oakland. And they didn't think Buffalo had the fan base to support an NHL hockey team. And the rink had 10,000 seats. They had to raise the roof and add 6,000 more seats, which they did. So anyway, sure enough, part of their thing was they would get 5,000 season ticket holders from the Canadian side. They would come because they couldn't get tickets in Toronto. So
Yes.
sure enough, absolutely, the whole time I was here, 5,000 people from Canada came over that border for every game for the Buffalo Sabres, and that solidified the team because of that fan support from Canada, or the people that didn't want to drive to Toronto and not get a ticket there. In Buffalo, they could get tickets when they needed them, and it was the same NHL hockey. And as you mentioned before, at the time, Buffalo was better than Toronto. Toronto went through a period of time that they were not good, and I was thinking about live because we talked
Harold Ballard era.
when he got the record beat by Austin. I talked to Ricky Vibe and I said, you know, at that time in Toronto, you scored back-to-back 50-goal season, but your team wasn't very good then, and you still managed to do that on a so-so team.
Yeah,
That was incredible. I saw it. I saw him do it, and I thought that's awesome. And I knew him from Team Canada and from juniors, but I was so proud of him because he did that. You know, being a Toronto Maple Leaf, there's a lot of pressure there. For sure.
100%.
Yeah.
There was so much pressure, and like I was blessed to have a Rick Vibe as a coach in junior.
Oh, nice.
And we've kept in contact. I've had him as a special guest on the show.
Oh, good.
And I really enjoy picking his brain. Great hockey mind, great guy,
yeah.
Mr. Rick Vibe, and I'm sure he's a great friend of yours.
Yeah, you know, I was going to say, Sean, we alluded to it before when we were talking when we go on tape. That to me, one of the most amazing stories is that these families that came from the Caribbean to places like Toronto and Montreal, and these kids that came through in the 80s, the Worrells, the George Laracs of the world, the Freddie Brathwaites of the world, and I could go on with those guys.
7 weeks, yeah.
Weeksy and Anson Carter, and those guys came through, and PK Subban. And can you imagine a couple? And it just shows you that athletics can play through. They could be a basketball player, they could be a football player, they could be a baseball player, but they chose to play hockey, and because of their athleticism, they made the NHL.
Now, I don't know, and incredible point. I don't know if it was you, Mr. McKegney, or if it was Danny, your son, that I had this conversation with. But along these lines, we were talking about, could you imagine if Michael Jordan?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was it you or Danny that I talked to?
Well, I made that point before, just thinking about, because I got to see Michael Jordan when he played for Chicago.
Yes, please elaborate.
Yeah, huge basketball fan growing up, and we were talking about different idols and people you looked up to growing up. My idols were basketball, football, baseball players, pretty much. And my dad got me a subscription for Sports Illustrated. And every week they had a different athlete from a different sport pictured on the cover of Sports Illustrated. It was a big deal. So sure enough, I had pictures of every major superstar that was on that cover. But the one I had next to me was a picture of Bobby Orr after they won the Stanley Cup. The picture of him diving through the air was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. So that was the one I had next to me on my wall. But I looked up to black athletes, football players, basketball players, baseball players, black people, because in the NHL, I didn't have a black person to look up to. And something I thought, this is a pretty big task. Nobody's done this pretty much. And Willie, I didn't know much of. He played 40 some odd games. And the hockey news we didn't have then, so I didn't really know much about him other than his minor league career I knew about. I read about that part. And I knew about Mike Marson a little bit, but not much other than that.
So now with the Michael Jordan, to elaborate on that, we were discussing, and you brought up before, could you imagine if he had the access to hockey and what he could have done with that sport, with his athleticism?
Yeah.
How fast he would have been. Imagine his explosiveness. Imagine, because he has got the hang time, right? So maybe that would have translated to the explosive start with the skating.
No, it would have been interesting to see, but again, you get back to the point where could his parents afford to have him play hockey? You know what
Exactly.
I mean?
Exactly. That
And
goes
that's-
to, and we're just about to get into the accessibility and all that of hockey. So exactly. You hit it right on the nail there, buddy.
Yeah.
100%. And that's the difference between our sport and a sport like basketball. Basketball is simply easier to access.
Well,
You need a ball,
and soccer as well. Soccer equally. Soccer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so Mr. McKegney, you are such an interesting man that I'm talking about all these little things. And you know what? It's not even the talking points that I prepared for, but I love it this way because this is what a real raw podcast is really all about. When you don't even go by your guidelines, you just talk. But what I really want to get into, because I know we have a time restraint, what I really want to get into, sir, is what you got going on right now, my man. Okay, because we have very similar minds, we have very similar passions, and we have very similar goals for this game. Can you tell the audience and the listeners the amazing things that Tony McKegney projects are happening right now?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I love your enthusiasm, by the way. It reminds me of you're like when you played. You're that enthusiastic right now. That's good. Anyway, I was too. Anyway, right now, I finished part of a movie with Willie O'Ree and a bunch of other people, and we did our part in California in February. It's called Black Ice, and you may have heard about it. It was a book that was written 12 years ago, and they're doing the movie. Hubert Davis is a director from Toronto, who directed the movie, a documentary piece, and Willie was there, and it talks about the history of hockey being started by people from slavery that came to Eastern Canada, Halifax, Nova Scotia, and out that way, and late 1800s, and they've got renderings, they've got information of relatives that have talked about these guys being out on frozen ice playing hockey. It's quite interesting. So I look forward to seeing the movie. I think it's going to be showing in October 1st. And then my project is we're doing a 30 for 30 documentary. Hopefully we'll get it sold, is about my life particularly. And then I've got about 15 other players that I played with and against, and we just have different stories. And then what we thought about doing, because there's a young crop of black hockey players, minor hockey players right now, that are doing so good. It's the best we've ever had in the history of the game. And I just think it'd be great to highlight those guys and basically let everybody know what a great job they're doing. And then if we talk to the older people like myself and Grant Fuhrer and Ray Neufeld and the guys that came in when I came in, and Claude Vilgrain and a lot of the guys you've talked to, basically if we can impress upon maybe the younger crowd, the younger fans, the new breed of fans about, okay, you know about the current guys, Anthony Duclair, you know about Evander Kane, you know about the current crop of black hockey players that are very good. But what about where this started? Would you like to take a peek back in history? And we'll have some footage and we'll just show some stills. We'll talk to the guys from previous, and then I want to intertwine them with some of the current guys, and they can sort of trade stories back and forth. And maybe the older guys can talk about what they went through as it contrasts to what maybe a guy coming through 3 years ago went through. Maybe it's the same. Maybe they went through the same strife as Grant Fuhrer did, or I did, or Jerome did, or somebody did back then. Maybe there's a comparison here. And how did you make the NHL? What obstacles did you overcome? So these are the questions. And again, I'm going to talk about mental health. I think it's very important because, and we talked about that, you and I just think with head trauma, I know I had 11 concussions in my playing career. And the first concussion I ever had, I fell off the back of at a baseball diamond. I was watching my brother play baseball. I was 2 stories up. on the back of a grandstand, and I fell down, fooling around with my friends onto gravel. So my friends carried me home, and that was the first concussion I ever had. And my buddy, former football player, Hall of Famer Joe DeLonglear from Buffalo, told me that every time you saw stars, it was concussion. And I saw stars all the time. I'd shake my head, sit down for a couple of minutes, and then go back out there again. And I just thought it was normal, seeing stars. And it was a minor concussion. So what I want to allude to with the movie documentary project, potentially, I wanted to donate 20% of the proceeds, mine, to mental health research, which I think is very important.
That's incredible.
I just think it's, and one of the chapters I wrote that was very interesting was called Asking for Help, because as an athlete, you don't ask for help. You think you can go through anything, shoulder through, whatever the term is, and just get through any obstacle, anything, because you've sort of done it. And then what happens is when your career ends, I think, and one of my buddies from the NHL, Kevin Westgard, said it's a transition of life, because for 20 years, I went to training camp every September. It was like not going to school for the first time when we didn't go to school after going to school from the time you're 5 years old. And your body felt differently, and you don't really know what to do. I left high school to go to the NHL. I wasn't an architect. I wasn't an engineer. I wasn't a lawyer. I wasn't an accountant. I wasn't a dentist. I went at 19 years old to the NHL. I left high school. Okay, here I am. No college. No, I didn't. I wanted to go to the NHL. That's what I wanted to do.
Yes. And you reached your dream, and you did it.
Yeah. But again, that transition after you finish, where we don't have something to sit back on, a degree. And it's just different. You're used to being with 20 guys a day, the camaraderie and just being around guys and winning and losing, traveling. It's a different animal.
Now, and I appreciate you saying all that. Now, out of all those things, for me, it's all about the team. It's all about being a part of the team. Is that how it is with you?
Yeah, it's you certainly rely on your teammates. And again, when you're fighting for each other and you're going out at night together, you're basically for 8 months of the year. And the only day off we had was Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, so 2 days. And then other than that, it was every day for 8 months. And you're with these guys every day, showering together, rooming together, eating together, flying together, traveling together. You're with them more than you're with your wife. And, that's a lot of time spent waiting around airports, waiting before the game, had to be early for everything. And so you're just with these guys at all times. So you learn to rely on each other. And there's no better feeling for me than winning a game on the road. That's what my favorite thing was, winning a game on the road. We'd walk into Chicago, and that crowd would be, you couldn't hear yourself think for 10 minutes.
The Chicago Stadium?
Yeah, you scored the first 2 goals, and the crowd became silent. It was my favorite thing to silence that crowd in Chicago. And they would get silent. If they got down, the crowd just got taken out of it.
Now, how would you compare the Chicago crowd to the Philly crowd, sir?
Oh, they're good.
Philly was a whole other animal.
No, they're all good. The cities like that, like New York. I went to a game in New York this year, and it was electric there. These fans, they're old school, Philadelphia, almost like Original Six. Like those teams are almost like an Original Six team.
Yeah.
With the fan base, Chicago obviously is. When I see 20,000 people outside the building in Colorado to watch, they're not even in the rink, they're watching the game.
Yeah.
When I went to Colorado in the late 70s, there were 6,000 people at the games.
Yeah.
The Colorado Rockies. And they couldn't give tickets away. So now, fast forward to now, and they've got like the hottest franchise, one of them in the league. And I'm so happy for Joe Sakic. I played with him. Great. I hope he wins for Joe Sakic.
Yes, I'm a huge Sakic fan. So yes, I agree with that. Mm-hmm. What do you think about Mr. Kadri and the G-dub that he got last night?
Well, it was great because I know he just came back, and I loved him when he was in Toronto. I thought, and I loved the fact he was from London, Ontario, just an Ontario guy.
Yeah.
played with the Hunter boys, so my friends,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So nice to see him, and maybe just needed a change of scenery by going to, and had a great year. He had 87 points this year.
Yeah, he's an absolute star. He's putting up Tony McKegney type numbers.
Know what I mean? It's great to see because I just like him, and I guess you could almost consider him a minority because he is there. Is there anybody else in the league that is
I believe
nationality?
I believe he's Lebanese.
He is, but I mean, is there anybody else that be? But Ty Domi was, so I guess his kid would be considered Lebanese, right?
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's absolutely right.
yeah. But I mean, you could consider him as being a minority, kind of.
Of course. Oh yeah.
I think you could throw him into that mix. I think.
Yeah. And the reason why it's so true is because, especially from the part of the world where Lebanon is from, in the Middle East,
Right.
they're really stereotyped a lot. They're not treated too well by more other majorities.
I remember when they first came over to Toronto back in the late 70s. It wasn't good in Toronto. Oh, it was.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it was not good. Anyway, I'll show you two things, and I'll talk about it. So, in the first 10 years of my life, I saw the Toronto Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup 5 times, or excuse me, 9 years of my life. 9 years old. So all I remember doing is sitting back and watching them win the Stanley Cup and parades, and sitting on the couch with my dad, right? And I got to meet Johnny Bower. So I got this picture of Johnny Bower. I put it on my fridge.
Oh wow.
And not only is he one of my favorite players, but basically he's one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life. Off the ice, just a great guy. And the other picture I'll show you, I started out wanting to be Bobby Orr, but I switched to left wing. So, and I got to know Bobby Hull, obviously. But anyway, that's my picture of Bobby Hull. And I wanted to be a left winger because Bobby Hull was just this 50-goal scorer up and down the left wing. And I was a left-hand shot, so I became a left winger because of Bobby Hull. And I got to meet him, and I played with his son and got to meet him and a bunch of things.
Yeah, and you know what? Stevie Ludzik has a very similar story to you. When he was a little kid, his dad and him went to a Leaf game. Chicago was in town, and you know what? He went up to him with a cigarette pack and got his autograph. And Hall took the time and was patient, shook his hand, looked him in the eye, and said, "Good luck, kid," and gave him the autograph. And Steve Ludzik will never forget that. So you're right on board with that, aren't you?
Yeah, when Bobby Hull was with the WHA, when he first jumped over, he felt like he had to carry the league somewhat because he signed a big contract, and he was the biggest name that came over. And basically, he was the last guy on the bus. He signed everybody's autograph. I heard from the guys that played Winnipeg, and they waited for him patiently, and he was going to make sure everybody got satisfied before he got on the bus. And the teammates just waited, knowing that he was doing,
so they all knew. Hey, Bobby's got to sign the autographs.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to say too, Phil Esposito deserves a lot of credit for bringing that team to Tampa Bay originally. He and his brother brought that team there on a shoestring, and just a Japanese guy that had no idea about hockey, but they sold it. And look at what's happening down there now.
It's unreal.
Phil and Tony started that.
Oh yeah. But how about how strong that whole region is, though, sir, for sports? Yeah. I forget what teams it is, but they're all so close. There's 3 or 4 major league sports teams, like baseball, hockey, and then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady's team. Hey, right? The Lightning.
Sean, I bought a home in Jupiter, Florida in 1981.
No way.
No, I did. It was a write-off, and then it was a rental thing, and I thought my parents were going to use it. So anyway, 1981, and so nobody really, they knew me because some people from Buffalo, so they kind of knew in the small town who I was, kind of thing. And but if you would have told me back then that it would be a team in Florida, the Panthers, or a team in Tampa Bay, I would have said you're out of your mind, because nobody even knew who the Buffalo Sabres were down there. When I was living in Florida for the 3 weeks or 4 weeks a year. But now there's a second black person there now. Tiger Woods is there now in Jupiter.
Okay, on.
He's there now.
He's a new.
And actually, Wayne Gretzky lives there too.
Okay, right on. Yeah. I was going to make the comment about Tiger. Forbes has just qualified him as a billionaire. So
Well,
he's doing
I'm not
pretty.
surprised because I think when he wins the Masters, that's got to be $100 million and everything included. It's got to be worth that with the commercials and everything that goes along with that and the equipment.
Yeah.
I just think that when he wins one of those things, that's a big number. And for
Yeah.
him, he got offered 900 mil to go to that live thing. Apparently,
Really?
he offered him
Oh,
900
the
to go to
LIV tour.
exactly
Yeah,
900.
I don't know too much about that, but man, is it ever causing controversy?
Well, what's happening is Phil Mickelson came out and said they didn't feel that the pension plans were good enough for the players after their
In the
careers.
PGA tour?
So if they can collect a bunch of money off of doing this, it's their pension outside of the PGA tour. It's a cash grab. It's a money. You know what I mean? It's one of those things.
Yeah. Wow.
But Jack hung in there because he's got his tournament affiliated with the PGA. The PGA made his career, everything. Okay, he's building golf courses. Tiger, same thing. He's going to have his own tournament. So you don't turn your back on the PGA if you got $1 billion. And obviously, he doesn't need the money to go over to Saudi Arabia and play around the golf.
$900 million?
That was a rumor that he got offered. Phil Mickelson got 200, apparently, 200 million. Those are numbers being thrown. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a tough call. Do you take the money or do you stay with your
stay loyal?
PGA, or it's a tough call. Who knows?
It is a tough call. So now, Mr. McKegney, as I discussed before the recording, I'm going to put you on the spot right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you if you will come back for a part 2. Now, sir, I want you on my live show, but I may have to get you on a Zoom episode before we can do that live show. So will Tony McKegney come back on the Sheriff podcast?
Yeah, you know what I'm going to say too, Sean. I'll be through with the immigration situation shortly. And what I'll do as soon as that gets rectified, I'll just make my way to Toronto because I really enjoy going there. I love
Toronto. Must enjoy seeing you, buddy.
Yeah, it was always a good place to go to. And it's kind of interesting. I can't find the record, but I found out that I scored 52 goals against the Toronto Maple Leafs in my career.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that the most of any team?
Well, I don't know. I'm just thinking about Wayne Gretzky, but I played in the same division, so he may not have done that. So 52 goals. And the guy that brought it up to me, Harry Neal, brought it up on a broadcast. We were playing against Toronto my last year. And he brought out the fact that I scored 52 goals against Toronto in my career. So, I'm trying to think of the numbers. That's probably 5 or 6 goals a year on average.
Yeah.
Or no, maybe a little less than that. But I mean, it's at least 4 a year or something during my career.
So Mr. McKegney, like before we go, there's a couple things that I want to get in here because I'm a big stat guy. So the first thing I want to get into is some numbers here. Now, for all the history buffs out there, everybody knows that right now there's a huge movement in recognition of Black hockey history. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Tony McKegney is like the royal leader of Black hockey history because Tony McKegney was the all-time point leader for a single season with 78 points until that young gentleman named Jerome McKinley came along. And this guy, I think Jerome might have cracked 100-point season a couple times, but you held that record for a very long time. To get 80 points in the National Hockey League in one season is absolutely incredible. I got to take my hat off to you. Now, 320 goals. 320 goals, Mr. McKegney, including a 40-goal season in the 87-88 season. That is big-time all-star numbers, right? That year for you specifically, was everything going like super good for you to look good?
The best thing was we had 4 great centermen that were great passers, starting with Doug Gilmour, following with Bernie Federko, following with Cliff Ronning, following with Tony Herkus, and then Rick Mahar. We had these great centermen, and what happened? For me, I'm a left-hand shot. The number 1 right winger got hurt right at the beginning of the year, so they switched me from left wing to right wing. And I was pretty good at the one-timers, so now I'm coming off the right side, and I got the opportunity to get these one-timers off all the time. Just get over and Dougie Gilmore and these guys, I just had to get open and the puck was there. So that's how you get 40 goals. I wasn't the guy to take the puck from end to end, but I was a guy that could get open, pretty good speed, and basically I knew when to arrive. And I spent a lot of time in front of the net on power plays. I just would get tied up with somebody. I'd screen the goalie, and more times than not, there'd be a rebound from a shot from the point. You turn around and you either had a chip in or you had a rebound goal. And a lot of stuff happened in front of that net if you're willing to hang out there.
Yes, yes, and only the strongest survive in front of that net. Now, I'm looking at your stats here. So the 87-88 season, you're obviously playing for the St. Louis Blues. That's where you're playing with Doug Gilmore. Now, did Doug Gilmore have a straight blade at that time as well? Because he did for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Was his
it was very straight. And back then they still had that restriction where you could only use a curve to be a quarter inch. And nobody was really going over the deal because the McSorley thing, right? Marty McSorley thing. And so nobody wanted to get caught with an illegal stick. So Dougie's stick, being a centerman, and I played with centermen that used a fairly straight stick. Obviously, it worked for him. He still had a great shot, even using a straight stick. Yeah, just a great player. He was 165 pounds, but he played like he was 180. Yeah. And there's one thing he used to do was very interesting. In the St. Louis arena, there was an elevator right near our locker room that would take you right up to the press box, right up to the rafters. So Dougie would go and take his sticks, and he would go by himself with a coffee, take the elevator right up to the top of the arena, and he would sit there, have his coffee, and tape his sticks and just look down at the ice for a half an hour. And he'd come back in, and he was ready.
So
I've never seen anybody do that before. Pardon me?
That was his mental preparation.
Yeah. He just be
manifesting what he's going to do.
No, but by himself. He sat by himself right at the top. There was the ushers weren't even there yet. Nobody.
Wow.
But the press weren't there. This is like 5:30, and nobody was showing up until maybe an hour later for working at the. He was there by himself. And I wondered for a couple of where's he going? And then I followed him. I
saw what the secret was.
And then I followed him, and then I got a look like, leave me alone.
No, I hear you. You know what? I think I've gotten that look from Doug before. Last year at Steve Ludzik's golf tournament, I was all over Dougie. You know what I mean? I'm a big fan, and I think he was just like, "Hey, buddy, I like you, but let's settle down."
That's funny.
So I know what that look is. Okay, so Mr. McKegney, we're just about done here. This project that you have going on right now, I love it so much. I love comparing the experiences of the old school to the new school. I love it so much, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. I believe that this is one of the main reasons to make our game more diverse. This is one of the main reasons that will make our game diverse, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Now, let's take a kid, any city in North America. Let's take Buffalo, New York, for example. Buffalo, New York, kid grows up. Now, the kid grows up, he's watching cartoons, he's watching his sitcoms, he's watching this, he's watching that. Oh, all of a sudden, a history special comes on Black players. Now, mind you, this is a Black kid. So now he's able to learn about Tony McKegney scoring 78 points in the NHL, scoring 320 goals in the NHL, playing over 900 games, being an all-star, being everything that he could be. He's learning about you. He's now looking up to you. You're an idol to him. And now he wants to be like you. So now he wants to ask his mom, I want to play hockey. I want to be like Tony McKegney. I want to do what he did. So by you doing this, it's making people aware of the heroes, of the pioneers. I try to carry this on with my podcast. I try to make my podcast concentrate on history and mental health. And those are the two things that you have projects going on right now. And I couldn't be more happy. I couldn't be more proud of you. And the one thing I could say is please do not stop, Tony McKegney, because we need you to do this. We need you. You're a huge idol. You need to be put on a pedestal way more. I'm going to be doing my best to be magnifying your career and all the other pioneers throughout until we get the NHL having your guys' personal days. Tony McKegney Day. The
Hey,
NHL
Sean.
Tony McKegney Day. We
Hey,
celebrate
Sean.
Tony McKegney today.
Hey, Sean, let me show you my jerseys that I have here.
I want to see all of them.
Here's the home blue. Sorry.
Wow. So that is that like authentic? Is that game worn Tony McKegney Buffalo Sabres?
It is, and it's funny. I brought out the clean one, but I had one I let my friend use, and had blood on the
beer
front.
league?
No, it was the OJ Howard, the football player. He was going to go to the Sabres game, so I gave him a my neighbor from the Bills. So it had blood on the front of it. And he said, "There's blood on this." He went and washed it, and I gave another one. And he said, "How'd that blood get there?" I said, "It wasn't mine." That's
there you go.
Yeah.
Who knows? It's whoever.
So anyway, here's the other one. My friend Richard Martin passed away, and we got a symbol on here for him.
Oh wow!
For former Sabre, scored 50 goals 3 times.
Yes,
my good friend of mine. He passed away about 8 years ago now. And then I've got that one, the color that you had and what you wore, probably, right?
There you go. Yeah, great.
I like that black. I'll tell you a story. When my friends and his girlfriend were running the team then, back probably just before you got there, and they wanted to do that jersey because they wanted a kid. He told me in Phoenix, Arizona, to like that jersey so much to buy it. Not knowing much about the Buffalo Sabres, but just like the logo and like that black color and the logo. So they were just hoping they could sell a lot of that stuff, and they changed the original logo to that logo. But I like the original. I like what I wore. I like the original stuff. That's what I like.
Well, see, I like the stuff that you wore better than what they wore this past season. Now, I know it's supposed to be the same, but there's just something about the threads that you guys had. It's just it's incredible. You're absolutely right. It's incredible.
Well, that color is it's sort of a royal blue. And one of the things I'll tell you about the original 6 is that the colors of the jerseys, the Montreal red jersey, the Leafs blue jersey, Chicago's red jersey with the logo, the Bruins, like the original 6, my God, these logos and these teams, they still stand up today.
Yeah.
Right up there with anybody. I don't care about the Las Vegas Golden Knights as far as their logo. It's great, but I mean, I want that Montreal jersey.
I know.
Or a Sabres jersey, or just something that just they were so smart. Detroit Red Wings, the red and the Red Wings, like it's incredible what they came up with back then.
And the wheel for the Motor City,
absolutely,
in the feather, right?
And
like that motorcycle wheel.
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Just way back when they figured it out. So anyway, Sean, definitely we'll come back for part 2.
100%. I was going to say, sir, you're so awesome. I could talk to you all night. I did promise you a time, so I'm going to stop being selfish, and I'm going to cut it down. I'm just such a big fan, and I know the listeners are like, no, keep them on a little longer. But guys, we got probably about double the time that Mr. McKegney promised us. So I appreciate it so much, sir. I can't wait for you to come. Thank you so much. I can't wait for you to come.
Yeah, keep up the good work with what you're doing. It's great.
Well, thank you so much. And Mr. McKegney, I just want you to know that there's a lot of people that look up to you, and I'm not lying about trying to make some changes to get pioneers like yourself more recognized, put on pedestals, because the young generation, we need to learn about all the things that you did, sir, because you did make it possible for guys like myself that came after you. And all I have to say to that is thank you very much, my friend.
Great. You're welcome, Sean. That's great. And again, really good. Good luck with everything.
Thank you so much. We're going to sign off now, guys. Thanks a lot, Tony, for coming on.
Hey, guys.